Okay, so everything is set up properly. So we can start off, we can do 3 bows to the Buddha, even mental bows. 1, 2, and 3. And then we'll do the homage one time. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened one. And so today is June 20th, 2026, and we're continuing to work our way through the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses of the Buddha, and we're in the Book of Eights. And today I'll try to deal with 2 suttas. One I'll treat briefly and then spend more time on the second sutta. So we'll start off with sutta number 28. And this is concerned with the theme of powers, and is speaking about, in this case, the powers of a monk, or we could say a monastic, whose taints have been destroyed. The word translated as taints, of course, this is the word asava. And so the asavas are a set of 3 mental forces which sort of lie deeply buried in the mental continuum of all unenlightened beings, and that we could say that drive the round of repeated birth and death, samsara. So the word asava here, I followed Bhikkhu Nyanamoli's translation of taints, but the word asava is based on the verb savati, which means to flow, and then with the prefix a, which can mean towards oneself or inwardly, though some can also take it outwardly. So asavas can be inflows, things that flow into you, or asavas can be things that flow out of you. And there are 3 asavas mentioned in the early Buddhist texts. These would be we'll use the word inflows, the inflows of sensual desire, the inflow of craving for repeated existence, which is the force that actually binds one to repeated becoming in the round of birth and death. And then the deepest asava is avidya, ignorance, which doesn't mean lack of education, but not understanding the true nature of things. And so when the Buddha attained his own enlightenment, sitting under the Bodhi tree, sort of what was the decisive achievement, according to the suttas, was the knowledge that he had destroyed the asavas. So based on the attainment of the 4 jhanas, he developed vipassana, or insight. And then as his insight penetrated to deeper and deeper levels, he penetrated to the 4 Noble Truths, and thereby he eradicated the asavas, these inflows that had been binding him to the round of repeated births through time without beginning. And then when he taught the Dhamma to others, his purpose was to guide them, to guide us to the destruction of the asavas. And so those who destroy the asavas are known, the usual word is arahant, But in the text, the arahant is also known by the expression keen asava, one whose asavas have been destroyed. And so now the Buddha is raising the question, how many powers does a monastic or practitioner possess by reason of which he can claim my asavas, my taints, have been destroyed? And then the Venerable Sariputta, based on the Buddha's teaching, is going to mention 8 powers which serve as the basis for that claim. So what are these 8 powers? So the first is a power of insight. We could call this the power of insight, or the power of wisdom. And so Sariputta says, here a monk with taints destroyed, that is an arhat, has clearly seen all conditioned phenomena as they really are with correct wisdom as impermanent. So all conditioned phenomena are sankharas. And so these are all things that arise through causes and conditions, things that depend on other things. So in effect, we could say everything in the universe is a sankhara. So our bodies are a bundle of sankharas. Computer is a bundle of sankharas. The sun, the moon, the planets, all of these things, every speck of dust is a sankhara. The cells of our body, the hairs of our heads, houses, cars, dogs, cats, everything that depends on conditions is a sankhara. And then at the subtlest level, the sankharas will be the 5 aggregates: bodily form, feelings, perceptions, mental factors or mental functions, and consciousness. So we just have maybe intellectually some kind of conceptual understanding of impermanence, but even any practitioner really who gains deep insight will see a wider and wider range of sankharas with correct wisdom, not just conceptual understanding, but we could say with direct insight as impermanent, not just in the sense that at some point in the future they're going to perish and disappear, but this becomes the knowledge of arising and vanishing, that every conditioned thing from moment to moment, from split second to split second, is arising and at a snap of a finger, breaking up and disappearing. And so when you sharpen your insight, you have to first develop some degree of samadhi or concentration, and then you take that focused mind and start exploring bodily sensations, seeing how the body is just a bundle of factors always arising, breaking up and disappearing. And then one turns to the mind and mental processes and sees that all of the mental activities are constantly arising, breaking up, and vanishing. And so even disciples at much lower levels than the arhat have some insight, direct insight into arising and vanishing. But the arhat has this comprehensive insight into the nature that all conditioned phenomena, by their very nature, are subject to arising and vanishing. So that is the first power of an arhat, by which he can claim my taints, my asavas have been destroyed. Okay, the second power is that he has clearly seen sensual pleasures as they really are with correct wisdom, as similar to a charcoal pit. So this is a pretty tough one to swallow because ordinarily our minds are conditioned to pursue sensual pleasures. I mean, that's just the nature of our life. So things seen through the eye always are attractive. Sounds through the ear, beautiful and charming sounds, attractive. We like delightful fragrances, delicious tastes, soft and delicate and stimulating tactile sensations. So that's sort of like the grip, the bondage that holds people sort of tied in this very, very tight bondage. So even people who are very knowledgeable about the Dhamma, I found, people, in fact, you know, like say in a country like Sri Lanka, maybe they get these young boys ordained at the age of 12, 13, 14 years old. So you have large battalion of monks, teenage monks. But then when you get to the 20s, the battalions have thinned out. Thinned out. When you get to the 30s, fewer and fewer. By the time you get to the 40s, just a handful of the percent of those who started out as teenage monks are left. Why is that? Because their parents wanted them to disrobe? No, usually the parents want them to remain as monks because they wanted to get good jobs. Not the main reason. Because they wanted to enjoy delicious food. Well, in the monasteries, you get a lot of delicious food. So what is the reason?
Sexual desire.
Okay, okay. I didn't say it, but somebody said sexual desire. Okay.
They fall in love, Bhante.
What is that?
I said they fall in love.
Yeah, okay, they fall in love. Yeah, especially I have to say, the big trap is that at the many of the monasteries, okay, I say it, that the nice young girls come to the monastery full of faith and devotion, especially when there's a young, handsome monk there. So full of faith and devotion. They come to the monastery offering Bhante, can I offer you some special sweets? Bhante, would you like some? I have some very fine Japanese incense I want to offer to you. Bhante, can we take you out to a restaurant for a nice, delicious meal? And then little things build up little by little, and before long, Bhante so-and-so has now become Mr. So-and-so. Okay, so this is how, how it works. It's just human nature. And so the sensual pleasures seem very, very enticing. So Bhante so-and-so leaves the monastic life and then finds that lovely little young girl who's been coming to the temple, offering the flowers and the incense. Now they are married very happily, romance, first few years of marriage, then it goes on, and then they're quarreling and fighting. They don't want to talk to each other. at breakfast, the husband is takes his newspaper, buried in the newspaper. The wife has her cell phone looking at the emails on the cell phone. They go their separate ways. And then maybe a few years later, either divorce or they just remain in an unpleasant marriage. Or too often what happens, okay, so we have to be really honest about this. They remain in a nominal marriage, but the husband is working in the office and a nice secretary. Sir, I really enjoy working with you. I appreciate you. So kind. It must be those time you spent in the monastery instilled all of these virtues in you. So you're so compassionate and kind to all of your staff. And then little by little, the boss says to the secretary, oh, let's take our coffee break together. And then maybe, yeah, let's go out for dinner. And then he calls the wife, dear, I'll be working late tonight. And that's the way it goes on. Yeah, this is the reality of human life. And so it all seems fairly pleasant, but then when you look at it deeply, it's like there's a very stark sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya 75, number 75. The Buddha uses a simile of a person with a skin disease, and he keeps on scratching. And when he scratches, it feels very pleasant. But as soon as you stop scratching, then the itch comes back even worse. And you keep on scratching and scratching and scratching. And you feel pleasure. But when you finish scratching, then the itch becomes worse. So that's why the Buddha says that you have to gradually, he doesn't sort of make it a universal demand, just give up sensual pleasures at once, but for the lay disciples, avoid misconduct in regard to sensual pleasures. And then at least on the Uposatha days, try to observe complete abstinence. And then for the monastics, to take the pledge or the vow of complete abstinence from sexual pleasures. Okay, so sensual pleasures he sees as a charcoal pit. This is from the earlier class. I don't know how this happened. How do we go? Okay. Okay. So then the mind of the arahant slants, slopes, and inclines to seclusion. It is withdrawn, delighting in renunciation, and is entirely finished with all things that are a basis for the taints. Oh, I put in a note here from a previous, yesterday I put in a note that's not here. Anyway, doesn't matter. So anyway, the way the commentary explains this, so what are the things that are basis for the taints? So it says, the commentary says, basically this means all phenomena pertaining to any of the three spheres of existence, the sensory sphere, the fine material sphere, the immaterial or formless sphere. So the mind slants, slopes, and inclines to seclusion. So this means to withdrawing from, from involvement, from socialization, from getting involved in a lot of activities, and delighting in renunciation. Of course, the arhat is already renounced or completely abolished, eradicated the leaning towards sensual pleasures, but they delight in seclusion, withdrawing in order to absorb the mind into the deep meditative states, the states of the jhanas, the formless absorptions, and especially what is called phala samapatti. This is the attainment of fruition, and that is that special meditative absorption accessible to the arahant, in which arahats can experience in this life itself the bliss of nibbana, of nirvana. Okay, and then the next powers simply run through the several groups in the 37 Bodhipakkhya Dhammas. So we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 5 groups are mentioned. So here we have the 4 Satipatthanas. So the Arhat, the mind of the Arhat is developed, he is developed and well developed, the 4 Satipatthanas, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. I'm not going to elaborate upon them, but just mention each of these groups. And then the Arhat is developed and well developed. Yeah, it uses developed, like many disciples develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness. But in the case of the Arhat, it's subhavita, that's well developed, completely developed, fulfilled. The 4 establishments of mindfulness, the 4 iddhipadas, these are the bases for psychic power. Then the 5 spiritual faculties, the 7 factors of enlightenment, and the Noble Eightfold Path. So it doesn't mention the 4 right efforts and the 5 spiritual powers, but those are implied. So those are the powers on the basis of which a practitioner can claim my taints have been destroyed. And then Sariputta concludes, when the amongst taints have been destroyed, he possesses these 8 powers on the basis of which he can claim my taints have been destroyed. Yeah, so I didn't want to go through these different lists of factors, since I really want to pass on and reserve time for the next sutta, which is very important in a very practical way. But if there's any questions that come up from this sutta, then please feel welcome. So Nabarun, I see first. Nabarun.
Thank you, Bhante. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante. My question is relating to asava, and we also get the term anusaya in the suttas, the latent tendencies.
Yeah.
And when we say that the basis for the asavas, it sometimes appears like it appears to me that the latent tendencies are somewhere the basis for the activation of the asavas. If I'm right, I don't know. But I'm just trying to understand the relationship between the anusayas and the asavas, and why the anusaya is not treated more like when we say the liberation is happening, we said the 10th, the three awakenings, one of them is the tents are destroyed, but not the latent tendencies are destroyed. Though it seems sometimes that they are more deeper, and the active part of the latent tendencies are the tents. So
That's an interesting question. I don't quite know the answer to it, but okay, so the anusia is a sort of a larger group of defilements. Let me see if I can remember them offhand. So there's the kamanusia, kamaraganusia, the latent tendency to sensual desire, patigha anusia, the latent tendency to aversion or ill will, dittanusia, latent tendency to views, the chikichanusia, latent tendency to doubt, bhavaraganusia, latent tendency to craving for existence, mananusia, latent tendency to conceit, and avijanusia, latent tendency to ignorance. Okay, so the asavas, we could say, will be three. Let's say the asavas will correspond to three of the anusias. So maybe, I don't know, just in this Buddha's presentation of the process by which he attains liberation, he always states it as the eradication of the three asavas.
right.
Yeah, but certainly to attain liberation, you also have to eradicate these seven anusias. Yeah. Maybe it just occurred to me, maybe because the anusias are eradicated more in stages. So the latent tendency to views and to doubt would be eliminated by the stream enterer. The latent tendency of sensual lust would be eliminated by the non-returner. Then the latent tendencies to conceit, craving for existence, and ignorance would be eliminated by the arahant. Whereas the asavas, I think, are eliminated entirely only by the arahant. Even the kama asava is sometimes given a wider application so that in its completeness, it's eliminated only by the arahant. That would be my understanding.
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't really know a definitive answer to that question.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, Rena?
Yes, thank you, Bhante. And also, how does it relate to kilesas? Is kilesa same as anusayas?
Trouble with the sound. We had some device that I would put in my ear.
How is this related to kilesas? Is kilesas also same as anusayas?
Yeah, the sound is coming out in a kind of scratchy way. Can you hear it clearly out there?
Yes,
Yes,
Bhante.
Bhante.
He is asking
Bhante,
about
the
kilesas.
yeah, the question is like he's asking whether the kilesas are also same as the anusayas.
Okay, try again.
I typed it in the chat as well.
Oh, I see you put it in the chat. Okay, let me check. How is it related to kilesas? Okay, the word kilesa is sometimes used in a general sense in which it includes all of these defilements, the asavas, the anusias, the fetters, and so on, are all called kilesas. But then there's also a specific group of 10 kilesas which come in the Abhidhamma, and I don't remember them all offhand. But let's just say, in the most general way, all of these are kilesas.
Thank you.
Okay, Samangi.
Yes, Bhante, thank you.
I have, it talks about being in solitude, liking being in solitude, almost equating to attaining these higher levels. Is that like wanting solitude the same? How do you know? How does one know? Do they does the sutra describe how one would know where one is?
How to know what?
How one would know whether they have attained certain levels. Like we talks about solitude, that's what brought my question. Maybe some people like solitude
No,
anyway,
but
or is that a sign of?
that's not necessarily a definite sign that you're an arahant.
Okay.
I mean, I like solitude, but I don't make any claim to be an arahant.
Oh, yeah, like how would one know whether they have attained certain?
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Last question I'll take. V.
Yeah, good morning, Bante. Um, I like to ask regarding point number 3 that you mentioned about Pala Samapati. Is it at the state of neither perception nor feeling, where
Say
the
say that
arahant, neither perception or feeling? You mentioned something about Pala Samapati. Is it at the state of neither perception nor feeling, where
no. I think you're thinking of the state of the
the
cessation of perception and feeling.
yes,
No, they're not the same thing. It's a rather technical difference between them.
okay,
So, Nirodha Samapatti, the cessation of perception and feeling, is a meditative attainment.
okay.
All feeling and perception cease. The Palasamapatti is a different meditative attainment accessible to the Arhat, in which the Arhat experiences the bliss of Nibbana in this life itself.
So even when they are awake, not during meditation.
No, in Palasamapatti is a meditative state, not just when
Oh,
you're ordinarily awake, but it's
oh,
where you
okay.
have direct cognition of Nibbana.
Okay, right. Thank you. Can I ask one more question regarding upakalesa?
Okay,
How
cool.
does, yes, what is the difference about upakalesa in the MN 128, where Anurunda basically saw light and sometimes it just disappeared? So, what is it, the relationship between upakalesa and asava?
And asava.
Yes. Is it part of asava? Upakalesa, is it a very subtle
No,
kind of asava?
the upakilesa, maybe it's not necessarily a very technical and specific group, though there are suttas which mention different groups of upakilesa. Maybe the broadest group you find, Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 7, the simile of the cloth. It
Okay.
enumerates 16 upakilesa. So the upakilesa, we could say, are defilements that arise, sort of, they're not as deeply embedded and fundamental and persistent as the asavas or the anusayas, but things that arise from time to time and sort of defile the mind.
Could you give some example?
I say just go to the Majjhima Nikaya and look in Sutta number 7. Okay, so just some examples that come offhand. Envy, miserliness, arrogance, vanity, jealousy, anger, greed, enmity, and so on. Yeah, there's a list of 16. I don't remember all 16 offhand.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Bante. Yep. Sadhu.
Okay, so let's
Yeah.
move on now, because this sutta is very important. This is sutta number 29. Here, the title is given Inopportune Moments. And so we'll just skip over the first couple of sentences and just go to this one, where the Buddha is saying that there are these 8 inopportune moments that are not the right conditions or not the right occasions for living the spiritual life. That's the brahmacharya. So the inopportune moments. Yeah, I put in my notes last night. I don't know what happened to them. Okay, so the inopportune moments. Yeah, the Pali word is akana. So the word kana has the meaning of moment. And in later Buddhism, it takes on the meaning of like just an infinitesimal moment, like a split second, like a thousandth of a second. But here it's being used in early Buddhism, not in that sense, but just the occasion, a time. So there are sort of 8 conditions which are not, or 8 situations which are not the right occasions for living the spiritual life. That is the spiritual life under a Buddha, in the teaching of a Buddha. So here we have a situation where a Tathagata, a fully enlightened Buddha, has arisen in the world, and he teaches the Dhamma. It said the Dhamma that leads to peace, that leads to Nibbana, leads to enlightenment. So the Buddha is available, the Dhamma has been proclaimed, but a person has been reborn in hell. So if you're living in hell, you don't get the chance to live the spiritual life under the Buddha. Okay, the second wrong situation, bad situation, the Buddha has arisen, the Dhamma has been proclaimed, but a person has been reborn in the animal realm. So if you're an animal, you're not going to live the spiritual life. Of course, some animals can come into contact with the Dhamma in certain ways, like maybe you know about the dog Aloka that accompanies the monks on their peace walk through the southern states in the US. So that dog, probably it was a practitioner in a previous life, and through some unwholesome karma has been reborn as a dog, but through it's good connections. It's come into contact with the monks that lives in a Buddhist monastery in Texas, and probably it's the most popular animal on the planet right now. Maybe more popular than Lassie. Does anybody know Lassie? Rin Tin Tin. Even people not from
Yes,
the
Bhante, that was years ago.
That's what I was saying. I said, I'm surprised. Those of us who grew up in the 1950s know. Okay. Okay, but we can't say that even Aloka, we can't say that Aloka is going to be leading the Brahm Brahmacharya. So it can do, maybe it's getting a lot of merits by associating with the monks and going on the peace walks. Okay, then the third bad situation, that a person has been reborn in this would be the realm of the pretas, the realm of the afflicted spirits. These are the beings who are always in the grip of extreme hunger and thirst. And so their whole life revolves around that obsessive need to obtain food and drink. So they never get the opportunity to lead the spiritual life. But still, we human beings, we can help the beings who have been reborn in the sphere of the afflicted spirits by, when we do meritorious deeds, we can do a sharing of the merits with them. So that will sort of plant wholesome seeds in their mind streams, but still they don't get the opportunity to lead the spiritual life under the teaching of a Buddha. Strange, this is weird. Okay, I just have to type what is under. Okay, so it said that, okay, the Buddha has arisen in the world, the Dhamma is proclaimed, but a person has been reborn among the long-lived devas. And so the text is not so specific what is meant by the long-lived devas. The commentary says that this refers to the non-percipient devas. These would be certain type of devas that don't have mind or consciousness or perception. But I think it will also refer to the devas in the non-material or formless realms of existence, because those devas don't have the capacity to hear, to listen, and so they are not able to hear the Dhamma. And so this is when you develop the arupa meditative attainments. That's the base of infinite space, base of infinite consciousness, base of nothingness, base of neither perception nor non-perception. And so you develop those formless meditations and you don't have wisdom. And so you enjoy, you delight in those meditative absorptions. And through the power of the meditative absorption, when death takes place, you get reborn in the formless realms of existence. So you have no body, no ear. And so if a Buddha appears in the world and proclaims the Dhamma, you have no ability to hear the Dhamma. And when you can't hear the Dhamma, then you have no ability to lead the spiritual life or to attain any level of the paths and fruits. But the lower devas, they can't lead the spiritual life in the sense of becoming monks or nuns, but the lower devas can hear the Dhamma and attain even all 4 stages of realization, even up to arhatship. And the Brahmas can also attain the stages of realization. Okay, the 5th bad situation. The Buddha has arisen, the Dhamma is proclaimed, but I have to make some apologies here. A person has been reborn in the outlying provinces among the uncouth foreigners. The text uses the word Mileka. I think in Sanskrit it might be Malecha, which is here translated as the uncouth foreigners. And so this is, you see, from the standpoint of ancient India, where the Buddha is teaching, the ideal place to be reborn is what are called the central provinces. That would be the region of India in which the Buddha's teaching is circulating. That would be, in ancient times, would be primarily the states of Magadha and the state of Kosala, and maybe to some extent, Avanti to the west. Today it would correspond to Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So those are the central provinces, and the outlying provinces in the Buddha's worldview would have been the regions far to the west, to the south, to the north. And throughout Buddha's history, probably the central provinces would have expanded to include pretty much all of South and Southeast Asia, maybe even East Asia. Of course, China is Zhongguo, the central country, right? And so maybe from medieval period, all of Southeast Asia, East Asia would be considered the central provinces, and the Americas, Europe, Africa, Australia, New Zealand would be the outlying provinces, the realm of the uncouth foreigners. But nowadays, one has to say that virtually any place on earth, you could access the Dhamma anytime.
Bhante, maybe this Malich is about the tribals who are living in the not in the cities. They were living in the forest.
I'm not getting the voice. Say again.
The tribals who lives in the forest, like the Native Americans live here. Tribal.
Yeah,
The tribes.
maybe in ancient times.
Yeah.
But nowadays, anybody, really, any place in the world, you could access the Dhamma.
There are still places in I think in India, where some tribals, they don't want to mingle and they are still living like in the old ways.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then maybe today, maybe in countries, I would have to say maybe like Saudi Arabia, with very, very strict regulations on getting access to information on the Dhamma. Maybe some people now with the internet, I can imagine that you could sort of, I don't know whether there are restrictions, but somebody goes on to some Buddhist websites and starts, well, to YouTube and get videos of Dhamma talks, but probably they have to do it very, very secretly, very covertly, because if the authorities find out, then they would be in trouble. So anyway, the important thing is that one needs a place where one gets access to, this is the important point, access to bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, upasakas, and upasikas, where you have the 4 communities of practitioners. So nowadays, this is rather strange. Some of my earlier typings have now appearing in a rather strange format. I don't know how to get rid of this. Okay. So this is the 5th unsatisfactory condition. Okay, now the 6th condition, again, that Buddha has arisen in the world, the Dhamma is proclaimed, and a person has been reborn in the central provinces, but he holds a wrong view and a distorted perspective. And this is the sort of classic formulation of that wrong view. In essence, it's the wrong view that rejects the principle of karma and its fruit, a view that says that there's no point in practicing giving and generosity. There's no fruit or result of good and bad deeds. There is no, of course, you have to accept this world, but there is no world, other realms of existence beyond this realm. There's no mother, no father. This isn't denying that people are born from mother and father, but this means that that we have no obligations to our mother and father, that there are no beings who are reborn, and no ascetics and Brahmins practicing rightly who have realized the nature of this world and teach their realizations to others. So that's the 6th bad condition. The 7th bad condition, okay, the Buddha has arisen in the world, the Dhamma is well proclaimed, you're reborn in the central provinces, but you are unwise, stupid, obtuse, unable to understand what is well expounded, what is badly expounded. So in order to really lead the spiritual life, to gain insight and realization, you need a certain level of understanding, ability to function with the mind, to comprehend. So somebody is complete dullard, very, very low intelligence, then they can't distinguish what's good, what's bad, what's well expounded, what's badly expounded. So they have no ability to really, they could do some maybe meritorious deeds. They could practice generosity. They could observe precepts if their friends or parents induce them, persuade them to observe precepts or to practice generosity. But to really practice the Dhamma diligently, aimed at realization, that's not possible. Then the 8th condition, and this is when the Tathagata has not arisen in the world, and then the Dhamma has not been expounded. So here you have all the other right conditions. You're a human being, You're reborn in the middle provinces, or nowadays, virtually any place in the world. You're wise, intelligent, and astute. You're able to understand what's well expounded, what's badly expounded, and maybe you hold the right view of karma and its fruit, but because the Buddha's teaching is not available, then you don't have the opportunity to live the spiritual life that leads to complete liberation. So what brings together all of these right conditions? So this is the one unique opportunity for living the spiritual life. So here we have a Tathagata has arisen in the world. And then the Tathagata has expounded the Dhamma that leads to peace, to Nibbana, to enlightenment. And you've been reborn in the central provinces. And then I would have to add, though it's not mentioned, that you hold this right view of karma and its fruit. You're wise, intelligent, and astute. You could understand what's well spoken, what's badly spoken. So when you have all of those conditions, that is the one unique right moment, the right occasion for living the spiritual life. And so now for us, we could hopefully congratulate ourselves that we have all of those conditions. And so that's why the Buddha says, strive diligently, don't be heedless, don't be foolish, don't squander your time, but use this precious opportunity, since it's said to be so rare for a Buddha to arise in the world. And sometimes enlightened beings arise in the world. These are called the Pacceka Buddhas. So they attain enlightenment, but they don't try to expound the liberating Dhamma. They just attain enlightenment for themselves. They might give some ethical teachings or meditative teachings to their disciples, but don't try to communicate the Dhamma. And so for us now, even though the Buddha is not alive today, but this is a Buddha era where a Buddha's teaching is around, and the Dhamma still preserved and transmitted. And even though we are living in the remote provinces, but we could still call these the central provinces, hopefully we have the right view, at least the mundane right view of karma and its fruits. To some extent, maybe not really wise, but at least enough wisdom to understand what's well spoken. And so we should take advantage of this unique, opportune moment to live the spiritual life. Okay. With that, then we could throw the floor open to questions. Okay, so Ed.
Yes, thank you, Bhante. We talked about, particularly with the previous sutta, the sankhara. And I have sort of come to view them as a central part of our own psychology, the beliefs and things like that we use to form our opinions and our actions and therefore get karma. So the question is, how do we acquire those sankhara? And I ran into some years ago a cute little word in one of your monographs called the vortex, the interaction between name and form and consciousness. And there, in dependent origination, in the counterclockwise version of it, it stops and then reverses itself, leaving out the first two nidanas. I wondered what your thought about this is, because, you know, it is, as I say, called fabrications, translated fabrications by some people, and concoctions by particularly, let's say, the Thai forest community. I very rarely heard a Dhamma talk on that, let's call it dynamic. And I wondered what you thought of it, because helping to understand it helps you to see the absolute foolishness, say, of our own sankhara and how we got them.
Yeah, the word sankhara actually has different meanings in different contexts. It really, to deal with all of these different meanings takes a full talk, a Dhamma talk in itself. But okay, there's one sense in that passage where it said that the arahant sees all sankharas as impermanent. In that sense, or sankharas in that sense includes all conditioned phenomena, everything that arises through causes and conditions. And then there's a narrower sense of the word sankhara, which occurs in the context of dependent origination. In that context, sankharas are volitional activities. And so far as volitional activities have the function of, say, producing things, bringing things into being. So we could say that sankhara has, so that it straddles two sides of the fence. On the one side, sankhara are the active forces that produce things, that create things, that construct things. On the other side, sankharas are the things constructed, produced, or composed through volitional activity. Yeah, so basically that covers the two aspects. Okay, another hand, I see Johnny.
Good morning, Bande. Can you hear me okay?
If you could boost the volume a bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does the order matter? I noticed that the order is different from agamas. We're so used to memorize is hell and then hungry ghost. And in the Nikaya, the order is different.
Yeah, I don't know why. Just different transmissions, maybe just put them in a different order.
Thank you.
But maybe it seems to me that, I don't know, I would go with the Nikaya order because the hungry ghosts are actually closer to the human realm than maybe this sounds counterintuitive, but they're closer to the human realm than the animals, because the hungry ghosts are depicted as having the form of human bodies, even though they're invisible to us, but they look like, they could be like our relatives, our uncles and aunts, even our parents who have just passed into the realm of the hungry ghosts, but they still retain the form that seems similar to the form that they had when they were living in the human realm. Whereas the animals look completely different from us. But that's just my speculation. I don't know for sure. Okay, then we'll take, is it Lila, is it?
I want to ask, do all arahants have attained jhana?
Yeah, I think I've dealt with this question again and again. There are different interpreters have different positions on this. Some say that all arhats have to have achieved at least first jhana. Some interpreters say that arhats have to have 4 jhanas, but the position that's sort of come down in the Theravada commentarial tradition is that there are some arhats who don't have jhana, but they attain arhatship through the path of pure insight meditation without jhana attainment. So those are the different positions. Which is the true one? I don't know. I tend
Yeah,
to
I
agree.
know there are four paths for obtain arahant. And for example, vipassana can directly reach that level. But my question is like after they obtained arahant and they can have jhana ability automatically?
It would seem to me that if you become an arhat, it should be no problem to gain the jhanas. So I don't know why any arhat would not just attain the jhanas. So I just don't know. Okay. But it's said that there are
Okay.
it's just the commentaries speak about, they have the expression sukha vipassaka. So it says that this is a practitioner who doesn't attain jhana, but they go directly through the practice of the four satipatthanas to develop insight, and then they go through all of the stages of insight up to the attainment of arhatship. It was saying once you attain arhatship, then it's no problem at all to attain jhana. Okay, I'll take one more question, then we'll have to close. This will be Erez Kaplan. Yeah, you have to unmute.
Hi, Bhante. It's a bit about the cosmology. I find it hard to understand why animal form is considered so low, because personally for me, many times I say I wish more people would act like the animals themselves.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, very true. I mean, animals can have much, much better dispositions than human beings. But to be reborn as an animal is much more, let's say, suffering in the animal realm. Though nowadays, I have to say also, with the kind of humanitarian ethic that we human beings have towards animals, many animals live much better than human beings. I mean, people have pets, pet dog, pet cat. The pet dog doesn't have to worry where it's going to get its food every day. Its owner will give them a nice meal or two meals. The dog will have a nice bed to sleep, or at least a little bed to sleep at night. If the dog gets sick, the owner will take it to a vet for medical assistance. Whereas so many, I mean, the amount of human beings, like almost 1 billion human beings suffering from food insecurity, 600 million have persistent hunger and malnutrition. Here in the United States, 48 million don't have access to health care. Yeah, so, but still it's said that the animal realm, at least from the standpoint of the Dhamma, that the animal doesn't have the chance to understand the Dhamma and to practice the Dhamma. So it's a disadvantaged realm in that sense.
I've heard
Yeah.
it explained that animals having a dull mind.
Animals have what?
A dull mind.
A dull mind.
Yeah, which cannot absorb the teaching.
Yeah, some animals, of course, can have some. Some animals can be very intelligent in their own way. Even crows, I remember, were able to do some quite astounding things. I don't remember what, but I think we're going to have to end our session for the day. Okay, so we'll end with the sharing of the merits. So we'll be sharing the merits with the Dhamma protecting devas, the nagas or dragon spirits, and then with all sentient beings. Akasata chabumata devanaga Mahedika punyanta manumoditva Chirangra kantu sasanang Akasata chabumata devanaga Mahedika punyanta manumoditva Chirangra kantu desanang Akasata chabumata devanaga Mahedika Punyanta manumoditva chirangra kantu mang parang dukha pata chani dukha baya pata chani baya soka pata chani soka antu sabe pipanino. May those in suffering be free from suffering. May those in fear be free from fear. May those in sorrow be free from sorrow. May all living beings also be thus. And then we'll be doing 3 bows to the Buddha. And so in the hall, we could stand up. It's a living. Okay.
Bow to Bhante Bodhi. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank
you,
Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu,
sadhu.
sadhu,
Thank
Bhante.
you, Bhante.
Thank you,
Help
Bhante.
to you. Thank you, Bhante. Everybody.
Okay, take care, everybody.
Have a good
Sadhu,
lunch. Thiruvon Sannai Namo Buddhaya. See you on Wednesday,
See you
Bhante.
again.
Thank you, Bhante.
Bye, Bhante.
Thank you very much, Bhante.